The SEC is already trending up on Byrum Brown.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Hopped on Locked On SEC with Chris Gordy, talked about Byrum Brown and answered some of his questions. Let's get to that conversation.
We welcome in our buddy Zach Blackerby from Locked On Auburn to talk all things Byrum Brown and expectations for this season. Zach, now that you have had a couple months to digest it and kind of settle in, I know Auburn's going to get on the practice field very soon, but
yes,
where are you on Byrum Brown? And I've had several people ask me, they say they're high on him, they love the numbers, but will this translate to the SEC? So let's start there. Where are you in the thinking of, will that game translate to the SEC?
Yeah, I mean, that's the million-dollar question, right? This is so different than in previous years when Auburn has had a guy, and you kind of got to talk about potential. The production, obviously, there, one of the handful of quarterbacks to pass for 3,000, rush for 1,000 in a single season, an elite group that he joined last year. And so now you look at it, it's like, okay, can all of this South Florida stuff translate? Byrum Brown, Alex Golesh, I mean, play calling, the pretty much like half of the receiving core. They brought their running back over, a few linemen, a tight end. Can all the South Florida stuff transfer to the SEC? And we won't know for sure. One thing that gives me more confidence about this, and I would be way more skeptical and asking a ton more questions, is Alex Golesh has had success in this league, not as a head coach, but he has gotten a front row seat as the offensive coordinator and the play caller when what we saw at Tennessee and with Hendon Hooker under Josh Heupel when they had the best offense in college football just a few years ago. It was that performance that got him the job at South Florida. One of the more aware answers I've seen from a press conference, and folks who watch Locked On Auburn hear me refer to this over and over and over again, Gordy, and I do it because I think it's important, is he was asked the question about, okay, your offense at South Florida, what should we expect at Auburn? And he talked about his time when he was under Heupel at UCF and they went to Tennessee and they had these discussions about, look, we can't do the exact same thing. The exact same thing's not going to work. Better players, different scheme and style of football. You're going to have to handle things differently. And they did, and they adjusted quickly. And then when his guys went from Tennessee to South Florida, they had the same conversation. They had to change things up. But now, obviously, they're going to have to change it up from South Florida to Auburn. He knows what it takes to win in this conference. I think that's big as far as him hand-picking these guys from South Florida to follow him to the SEC. And obviously, Byrum Brown will be the headliner for all of that.
We talked about the quote they had saying they want to run the bleep out of the ball. I think that yeah, I think that pertains to.
I think we can say that.
Okay. I think it pertains a lot to Jeremiah Cobb. And, I think, gosh, how many times, Zach, the last 2 years, we're watching Auburn game, run the football. Please run the football more. I mean, I think we even talked about it here a couple times, but
yeah,
that's encouraging. But it also made me wonder, how much are they saying Byrum Brown, who had 1,000 yards rushing last year? And as we know how the game has changed, you can't be very few statues do we have left in college football or the SEC. I mean, even think of the national championship game. Fernando Mendoza puts his head down, takes off with a big run. So You have to have that as part of your game. But, man, Byrum Brown is a special runner, and I just wonder how much they're going to call that number this year.
Yeah. Fun. Let me ask you a question. I'm going to put you on the spot here. Who do you think ran the ball more last season, Byrum Brown or Jeremiah Cobb? Starting quarterback or starting running back?
I'm going to assume this is a trick question, and I do have Byrum Brown's numbers with 175 carries. I'm going to say he had more carries than Jeremiah Cobb.
It is a trick question. They both had 175 carries.
Okay.
It's the same amount. Yeah, I mean, you look at Auburn's running back room, even without Byrum Brown, you got to think, wow, this is a team that wants to run the football. They brought in some dudes that, Gordy, I don't think they had to bring in. Jeremiah Cobb, obviously a returner, but then they go out and get Nykahi Davenport, who's one of those South Florida guys that followed him. And then Bryson Washington, a very good running back coming over from Baylor. That was kind of Baylor's big talking point going into the season opener last year between Baylor and Auburn out in Waco. I think he can be an electric and dynamic back. And when he's arguably your second or third back in this room, they also went out and got Tay Meadows, who's more of an experienced guy. He came from Troy. I think he'll have somewhat of a piece. And then maybe my favorite guy in the room, he's just young, Omar Mabson. He was an early enrollee last year. We saw him a little bit down the stretch there, but I think he's tailor-made for this offense down the road. Maybe not so much this year, but down the road. And then Alvin Henderson as well is a guy that the staff really likes. So I think, Gordy, this staff knows, and this goes back to what we were just talking about, translating the game and the offense and the scheme and the mindset from South Florida and transferring it to the SEC. I think he's got to know we can't run Byrum Brown 175 times in the SEC. I'm assuming. And let's also keep in mind 2 years ago, this is a guy who missed time due to an injury. You don't want that to happen again, obviously, because the backup plan, there's not really one. So I think they brought in these stable of running backs. It's like, yeah, we're going to use Byram's legs some for sure. Don't get me wrong. It's a strength. It's a weapon. But I think they're going to use a stable of running backs that they've put together. We continue our conversation next, right here on Locked on Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at 5 Hour Energy. Welcome to the 5 Hour Energy flavor draft with 18 different flavors to choose from, including new options like confetti craze, fruity rainbow, or cotton candy. There's something for everyone. The board is set and the flavors are ready, and I've got my number one pick for the 5 Hour Energy flavor draft. I'm going with grape. I think grape in the form of a 5 Hour Energy shot tastes delicious, sugar-free, and gets you through your day. Find your new favorite flavor of 5 Hour Energy shots available online at 5hourenergy.com or online at Amazon. Today's show also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. If you've ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person, well, FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality. All you have to do is use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll be automatically entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole 9 yards. So I imagine a popular one of those will be, who wins the NBA championship. But other lines, maybe not for this competition or sweepstakes, but other lines to look at. Auburn, a 3.5-point favorite at the time of me recording this as they host the Kentucky Wildcats Saturday night. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
We continue our conversation talking with Zach Blackerby, host of Locked on Auburn. And Zach, when we talk about Byrum Brown and his production and what he can do with his arm, we could talk about the yards, we could talk about all this, but the question is, who's he throwing it to? And, this is kind of an easy answer. Guys he's thrown the football
the
to.
Same guys he threw to last year.
I mean, it was wild. It almost became comical when we were tracking the transfer portal day by day, and it's like, oh, look, another USF wide receiver is transferring to Auburn. And I kind of like the idea. I mean, you talk about continuity and chemistry and all that. Like, who better than guys you had? Now, again, now you're going up against SEC DBs, but it's an interesting dynamic. But I say that for anybody who hasn't paid attention to Auburn's offseason. Cam Coleman's gone. Malcolm Simmons is gone. Eric Singleton's gone. All these guys that we got used to at Auburn last year, last 2 years that were like, throw them the football. They're really good. They're all gone. So how does this transition work?
Yeah, I mean, I think the transition's it might be more of a question for the receivers that were on Auburn's roster last year and chose to stay. Your Sam Turners, your Bryce Canes. But no, I think all of these guys in a vacuum, if there was no context of, Alex Golesh and folks following their coach, and you look at them all in a vacuum, I think any SEC team would be like, Keshaun Singleton? This guy's a stud. Jeremiah Koger? Oh my goodness, this guy's a stud. Chaz Nimrod, he was in he was at Tennessee a few years ago. Golesh obviously had a relationship with him and then transferred to join him at South Florida. I think all these guys make a ton of sense. Christian Neptune was kind of the guy in the slot, and then Corey Pettigrew didn't really play, but an underclassman. We'll see exactly if he can crack the rotation. I don't think he will. I think he's a future piece, but I think if you look at all these guys individually, it's like, yeah, I think a lot of schools would have said, okay, there's room for you in this receiver room. What stands out is it's so much South Florida that followed them. So we'll see exactly what it looks like. To be 100% honest, Gordy, I kept expecting another like primary receiver to come in that wasn't from South Florida, and they pursued a few guys. It just didn't happen. I don't know if it was fit. I don't know if they felt like they wanted to be the number one and Keshaun Singleton was the number one. I'm not sure. I guess it doesn't really matter at this point, but I respect that he's got a plan, and his plan was to win with his guys and bring in other pieces, to kind of fill out the roster, but we'll see if the plan works. I respect it.
And Singleton, by the way, 50 catches for 877 yards last year. Their leading receiver at USF, and 4 of their top 5 receivers all there. The only one who didn't come is Ruben, and he graduated. He was done. So otherwise he would have come. But
and a guy to watch in this is Jeremiah Koger to me. So, obviously when all the South Florida stuff was happening, I'm watching their tape a good bit, right? And I keep seeing Koger make all these plays, and I just assumed that he was an upperclassman, and he is not. He is a young guy. I think Auburn has him listed as a sophomore. So a name to watch. I think he can be a star if this whole transition works and this offense works at Auburn. I think Jeremiah Koger will be a big piece of this.
And the other thing that jumps out too, Zach, is Singleton or Koger 15.7 yards per catch, Singleton 17 yards per catch, Chaz Nimrod 20 yards per catch. You're talking big plays downfield. Now, again, against SEC DBs might be a little bit different, but it's a high-flying offense. They scored a ton of points, and if anything, if you're an Auburn fan, that's got to excite you. That, look, I don't know how many games we're going to win, but at least the offense will be entertaining after the crap we've had to watch the last 2 years.
It's been abysmal. I mean, the lack of offensive product has been atrocious, and then it was some sick joke that we kind of actually had an offense now that the season was lost after Hugh Freeze got fired, and they, totally revamped the thing, and it's like, we could have had this all along. What's going on? But yeah, no, very excited for the offensive philosophy, the veer and shoot and all that. Should be fun.
Last thing, if I say, Zach, I'm looking at my crystal ball at the end of this year, it is Byrum Brown who leads the SEC in passing and touchdowns. On a scale of I'm super crazy, what number would you give that take? I mean, would it shock you?
Can I alter it some? Do you mind if I alter that statement a little bit?
Sure.
Instead of total like passing yards, can I just do total yards from scrimmage? Can I alter
that
a little bit, throw in rushing in there too? I don't think that'll be crazy. What's the scale you gave me? 10's absurd.
Just say it again. Like, how shocking would that be?
I'd be a little surprised. But I don't think it's the craziest. Like, I don't think it'd be the craziest thing in the world. Yeah, I would say I'd be moderately to not super shocked.
Yeah, it's look, again, it's the unknown. I mean, we talk about the quarterbacks we do know. Arch Manning, we know what Texas is getting in him. We know what Oklahoma is getting in John Mateer. Like, we have all these knowns coming back. Marcel Reed at A&M. But like between and this is interesting because I talked about CBS Sports had the piece up yesterday that, 2 of the top 5 quarterbacks of new transfers that they have is Sam Levitt at LSU. They had him number 4, and they had Byrum Brown at number 5 at Auburn. And it's like, people keep asking me, Zach, what do you think Sam Levitt's going to be at LSU? What do you think?
That list was a joke, by the way. I did a full show on that list, total, because it was ranking off of fit. Fit their new location. And I'm like, Byrum's it's the same fit.
Right.
What are you ranking?
That's a good point. You want to
put Nestamaker at 1, which is what they had. Like, that's fine. Similar deal. Okay. And translating to the Big 12 defenses aren't going to be as tough. Like, I get that. That's fine. But to put Byrum at 5 when you're ranking fit,
right?
That was absurd to me.
But the point being with Levitt and
Go
Byrum
ahead.
Brown, it's just the two unknowns of like, I don't know what they're going to be. Like I said, you could tell me Sam Levitt is going to lead the SEC in passing. Great. You could tell me Byrum Brown's going to do it. Great. We don't know until we see it.
Yeah. And Sam Levitt thing that like I'm just not really hearing that much about is like the whole foot thing. Like that's not something that you can really rush back. And it sounds like it'd be super limited in spring. Different injury, but sounds similar to the DJ Lagway thing a year ago. I don't wish that on Sam Levitt by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think it's weird that that's not being brought up at all.
Well, and I guess for LSU too, they did get Hassan Longstreet, the 5-star from USC, so not a bad backup option.
For sure.
If they go that route. And by the way, we're going to see these guys play each other. We're going to get Auburn and LSU back on the football field again, so that'll be a fun one.
Man, Auburn's got a lot of fun storylines this year. You know, the first SEC game is them hosting Florida, which, you know, they had all that drama of, you know, Auburn thought, you know, they were going to get, you know, the guy who ended up going to Florida from Tulane, which is interesting. And then, you know, Vandy's the next game where it's like, all right, you know, Diego Pavia was the Auburn killer for so long. Can they kind of get back to beating Vanderbilt now that Diego Pavia is gone? They go to Oxford, which would have been really interesting if it was Deuce night, but it appears that it will be Trinidad Chambliss at this point. And then, yeah, they host LSU. I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot of stories. Arkansas comes to Auburn. And so, you know, Silverfield, when he was at Memphis, kind of consistently got the better part of Golesh at USF. And now, you know, can Golesh repay that? I don't know. It's going to be a fun storyline filled season, regardless of how things turn out.
The only thing we won't see is UNLV on the schedule with Jackson Arnold. That would have been a fun one.
Do you think he was 8 on that list that we were just talking about?
Was he? I didn't go past
8.
5. Well, we'll see. Dan Mullen doing pretty good down there. That's what I love. I always love SEC coaches. I always see like SEC coaches who fail but then bounce back somewhere else. Watch Billy Napier be awesome at James Madison. You know what I mean?
Brett Bielema is getting it done. Yeah, sure.
He's doing well. He is Zach Blackerby, Locked on Auburn. Zach, always appreciate the time, man.
Thanks, buddy. Thank you to Chris Gordy over at Locked on SEC. Thanks for making Locked on Auburn your first listen. Make Locked on SEC and Chris Gordy your second listen every single day. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked on Auburn.